In this video, I'll be talking about what tools I ended up actually using for Inktober, a bit of a review, and a little overview of what I was able to get done. So welcome back. This is Cetriya, Cetriya, and you could easily find all of my social media accounts by searching that username. So it's a few days after Inktober, and finally I got it done. I was one day behind, but still I made it. I know for many, you guys may have not made it, but don't feel bad about it. A lot of you probably had struggled to get through it. Again, don't feel bad about it. And many of you are just busy, or in my case, I did get sick a few times throughout the day on top of being busy. And there's just a lot of stuff that's going on. But first, let's get straight into the overview or review of some of my favorite tools. I did post a previous tool review or tool overview of the stuff that I use, and I'm gonna go ahead and link that into the video if you want to see a more in-depth of more of the tools that I have on hand. But what I end up using is I did have a couple of larger illustrations, but again, because I was so busy, I was trying really hard to do Inktober whenever I had any sort of time. That means that I had to do everything portable. So what I'm going to do is show you some of the more common stuff that I did based on the illustration that I worked on. So for this first illustration, some of the things that I really appreciate on here was this guy, which it's called the Cetriya needle drawing pen, and you get about 12 in a pack for about, I think, $15 on Amazon. I'll make sure to link to all of those items down in the description below. None of them are affiliated, but you know, just in case you need to find it. But anyhow, what I liked about this plan was it was very black, like a neutral black, and also they come from 0.005 to a 2, which was this really thick tip, and I really appreciate that for filling in certain areas. Unfortunately, this tip is not as fine, so it doesn't taper as much as I want to, but if you want something to fill in your illustration on a go and make it a nice solid black, this was a really good fit. The other brush tool that I used was called the Zig Clean Color Real Brush. Now for this one right here, I'm going to go ahead and just quickly show what it does. Is that if you're going slow, it really replicates kind of like a Japanese style painting of inking, but if you go really fast, it dries it out. It does a dry brush effect, which could be what you want. But what really is interesting about this pen that I kind of found as I was working, and it sort of became a happy accident, though at first I was kind of worried, is that it's water soluble, and when it does, it gives it this kind of purple bluish overcasting color that, now that I know the tool can do that, I really appreciate. So the girl's outlines was done with this pen, and then in the areas that I wanted to fill in, you just got a quick water brush and then just add that on, which really works if you're including these type of portable Kuretake fill brush pens. You could fill it with water. This one's green because I filled it with colored water, but you could fill it with water, and then you just have your Zig pen for inking, and then you just lay it in with solid fill. So I do appreciate this, but at the same time, for the look that I was going for in the beginning, wasn't what I was really wanting, but in the end, I did start using it and experimenting. So for the next illustration, again, I had used the Cetriya needle pen, so that's one of my favorites for sure. The next little thing was the just classic gel roll. Now I've used these sometime long ago. These are pretty good. They're unfortunately aren't archival, therefore the whites may turn to a touch bit of a tint of yellow, but still pretty good. And then of course I mentioned this in my marker review, which I'll link again into the video. This basically was my fill for both the light gray color and the black color, and I used the black color for fill all of my blacks in. Still now it's pretty juicy, so after 30 illustrations, I say this is definitely a win. You get 50 markers for about $20, so this is definitely a win. Something that maybe some of you may have not expected, and that is the Crayola color pencils that are erasable. They're not as dark as the regular colored lead that you might find, and they don't stay on the paper once you erase. And the eraser it comes with is actually a good eraser. I know a lot of times they're not that good. They do not sell these individually. They do sell them, I think, in a pack of 12 and 24. I don't know the price for those off the top of my head while recording, but I will link to it. It's Crayola. I doubt it's that expensive. The only caveat is, unless you're using a very permanent ink such as the Cetriya, it might resist when you're trying to ink it. Like, for example, using the Zig, it resisted like it was wax and it could not color over it, but they do erase very, very well. So the theme that I had for Inktober was queens, specifically space queens, galactic queens, those queens that you see on the sci-fi shows, and just enjoy the illustration. I'm going to quickly go over some of the artwork that I had created just for you guys to see a preview, and just a quick little mini announcement, more to come in the future. I will plan to put out just a small Kickstarter, just so that way, for those who are interested, you guys can get a collection of all of these illustrations in one book. I have to say, during Inktober, I really liked all of the experimenting that I got to do. This will definitely help for convention commissions in the future. Hopefully I get into a couple of them. Artist Alley has been really, really hard to get into, but as you can see right here, there's like 2 different shades. So these are 2 different techniques, or rather materials, that I use. For this, I used the cool gray of the marker for the girl, and then I just did a regular ink wash. The inks that I'm using is actually a pretty old one. It's kind of like damaged, but basically it's the Bombay ink, but the black and white. I should treat these a little bit better, but the black and white version, and they're Dr. Martens. Once they dry, they're pretty much set. They are not water soluble, so if you need to make any color adjustments, you need to do that before you lay down the ink. They're not easy to wash off either. Did a quick washing right there. Anyways, as I was saying, the difference between cool grays and warm grays. So even if you're using like a black wash, as soon as you dilute it, there's going to be different shades. For this guy, or this lady, I specifically just decided to use a regular ink wash because I wanted the shades of grays to be the same shade. You may be able to see it real closely, but you could kind of see like a weird red hue. And that is what happens when you use regular red lead. For example, these kind of red leads, they don't erase, but anything that I had pre-drawn with the Crayola erasables, they got off real easy. Again, this one was just using the technical pens and the the markers to fill out the gray. Another ink wash illustration, a princess or queen in training. I thought it was cute. This felt more like a royal portrait. Decided to give something very stately. You could kind of see the red cast on this. Once I edit the book, red doesn't really show up when scanning as much, but it really is kind of irksome because I will be offering these original illustrations for sale online, but more about that on another video. This was definitely an experiment for me, but I kept to a wash and I really appreciate how it came out. The white lines that you see in here was again with the gel pen, the regular Jelly Rose, and I think it's like 3 packs for $10 or something. I do appreciate the fact that it does glide on pretty nice and clean. My only caveat is the fact that I think after a while they do dry out, but like perhaps maybe a couple of months, especially if you don't use them. But if I'm pretty much going to be drawing almost every day or every other day, you'll use it all the way down to the very last drop. So this is again the technique where I used the jelly roll. I used marker to add a little bit of highlights, then an ink wash, and then again the jelly rolls to do a little bit of highlights there. This is when I discovered that the Zig pen, the Kuretake Zig pen, does get water soluble, so you can kind of see that I didn't exactly plan it, because I was trying to just do an overwash with the regular ink wash, but then I just decided to, once I noticed that in one area, to take advantage of it. But still, this ended up being very much softer than I thought it would have ended up, but still, sometimes you make those accidents. I always say it's best to experiment on a short project like Inktober than working on a major project. This was very much just tech pen, marker highlights, and a little bit of gel roll. This is when my hands was really tired, so I didn't erase this. Again, it won't show up in scans. I might erase this later on. Some probably will still show up though. This is again with the ink wash. Marker and ink wash. As I said with Inktober, I did work on larger pieces of paper, but as I got further into working on the illustrations, I started to work smaller because I needed to take this portable. And I have to say, as you can see in the tools, I use ink wash, I use dip pen, I use color pencils, markers, and they worked really, really well. So I just want to do a quick feature of the, I think, $1 Simply Sketchbook Extra White, and it shows on the icons that it takes dry media well and pen well, but it also does take whitewash pretty well. It's 65 pound, 100 grams paper, acid free, which means it'll be very archival. I just love the fact that it's in 80 pages and it is really beautiful. They're all perforated, so you can easily take them out. More than anything, this book was just $3 a book. I got them, I think, on sale, but I think they might have gone up in price, but I remember getting a whole stack of them, and I'm slowly getting into using them, and I really appreciate the quality of these books. So again, we have the Raleigh Sketchbook, the Jelly Roll, the Marker, the Crayola, the Kuretake, and the Superior. A bit of a bonus, you guys. I bought these lovely, lovely Tombow pens. Pretty much my baseline work was using these guys, and the reason why is, as much as I like technical pens, they don't taper the way I like to. These give a natural feel without being water soluble. They're just awesome calligraphy pens. One is a softer tip and one is a harder tip, but both can go from thick to thin really well, and you get a set of 2 for $6. If there's anything here that you guys decide to buy, I definitely recommend these for quick on-the-go sketches where it still looks good. So those were my favorite tools of Inktober that I end up using. I ended up not using my dip pen because carrying a well of ink and a nib was not good. All in all, I do appreciate this Inktober. We'll see if I do it next year. Hopefully you guys can join me. And again, more info on that Kickstarter. So please subscribe and leave a comment. I will be putting out more sketch requests. So now is the time for me to let me know what kind of characters you like me to draw. Keep it PG, preferably in the sci-fi or contemporary. All the best. See you in the next video.